Welcome, everyone. I hope you're having a good evening, morning, afternoon, whatever you choose, of course, to watch this. And as you can see the title, this is a CBR article that came out a couple weeks ago, and it pissed off a lot of fans, understandably so.
Viceroy, are you all right? I came to help, Your Highness.
Again? It's him again?
Because what they did here was they simply made an article where they wanted to piss off, the fans by pointing out flaws of Lelouch that I don't think were legitimate. And I don't mean like the problems themselves, but just how they framed it. And the goal behind this was to get you so angry you would share it with other people, give them more clicks, and ultimately more money. And I thought, hey, let's go through the CBR article and actually find out if it has any legitimate points to offer. Of course, you guys know that CBR never really does that, because if they did, it wouldn't cause controversy and it wouldn't get clicks. And this person, I have two conclusions about them who wrote it. Either they knew about Code Geass and actually specifically went out of their way attacking Lelouch, or they didn't know about Code Geass, did some Wikipedia searching, and here was the final result. Either way, all the 10 ways they mentioned in this article about how Lelouch ruined his likability, most of them are not legitimate. Now, there are things he did that did ruin his likability, which is, I have a list I'm going to share at the end of this. But even then, it's subjective. All this is subjective. CBR has always prided itself on making factual-based articles, but we know there's no such thing in context to things like this. So we're going to go through this article, and we're going to see how accurate they actually are. Spoiler alert. All right, title of the article, Code Geass, 10 Ways Lelouch Ruined His Likability. When push comes to shove, Code Geass's Lelouch often decides that the ends justify the means, and it can be lethal for those who get in the way. Yes, that is technically true. The results are more important, but he won't do certain things to achieve his goals. For example, killing those closest to him, specifically family and friends. But for most people, yes, ends justify the means. Lelouch v. Britannia, aka Lelouch Lamperouche, takes on many roles in Code Geass, from son of the 90th Emperor of Britannia, Charles v. Britannia, to the leader of the Black Knights and secret outlaw by the name of Zero. There's also Julius Kingsley, but yes, those are valid points. He is a fan favorite character, and even the actor who voiced him in the anime won an award for his work. Still, like any great hero, he is now without his flaws and had moments where he was downright unlikable. Again, you have to ask yourself, and not again, but you got to ask yourself a question here. When they are talking about unlikable, are they discussing among the characters in the story or among the fan base? Because those are completely two different things. I'm not attacking anyone in particular, but I know that a lot of Code Geass fans love Lelouch, and even though he does awful things, they still like him despite that. So I don't know who they're talking about in reference to being unlikable. Now, the other thing to consider too is that just because a character does things that are awful, it doesn't mean that they ruin their unlikability or their likability, right? There's many villains in anime that we love, even though they do awful things like Aizen or Johan or even like Yagami. It doesn't mean we agree with all the things they're doing, but it's a fictional story, so we have a right to like characters that could be theoretically evil. The question to ask yourself is, why exactly is the person unlikable? Because of the actions they have committed. That's something CBR is not going to justify in this article, and they're definitely not going to explain again if this is about audience not liking Lelouch because of his actions or the characters in the story. And depending on how you frame the argument that way, you could be right or wrong. But ambiguity is a CBR specialty. When push comes to shove, he often decides that the ends justify the means, and it can be lethal for those who get in the way, which is what they said in the top here. That's just classic SEO crap. Anyways, let's go through the first point. Number 10, he ignored C2's warnings and then put her life at risk. In Code Geass Lelouch of the Rebellion, Episode 7, Cornelia is set on drawing out Zero. They've set a trap at the Saitama Ghetto with similar conditions to the skirmish at Shikinu Ghetto. C2 warns him, Shinjuku, my bad. C2 warns him, but Lelouch decides to go right into the trap anyways. When Cornelia gets the upper hand, C2 takes the heat off by putting on the Lelouch costume, Zero costume, and gaining attention of the Britannia army. It's an example of his willingness to put not only his own life, but that of others on the line. All right, a couple of things to note here. First of all, Lelouch didn't ask C2 to help him out. That was her own decision. And if you want to blame anyone for making her put her life on the line, that'd be Marianne, since since she is the one that actually sent C2 to do this, right? It wasn't Lelouch. So that's already wrong in and of itself. The other thing to consider is that Lelouch did know that in fact it was a trap, but he still believed he could take her out given his victory, his recent victory over Clovis. C2 also can't die, and Lelouch knows this. So can he really put her life on the line? Now, granted, later on in the story, he does get a little concerned for C2. He'll say things like, if you get in trouble, make sure you escape, or, don't die and stuff. Like, he does ask her almost in a, what's the term? A question with, like, no answer, or not, or rhetorically saying, that you can't, that you shouldn't die, knowing that she can't. In this context, though, he wasn't making her put her life on the line. Lelouch was he basically accepted the fact that Cornelia defeated him and he was going to open the hatch for her to capture him. C2 coming in was not his plan. In fact, what's so dumb about this point is if you watch the end of the episode, when he goes into the cave escaping, or the sewers escaping, you see C2 wearing the outfit, and Lelouch is pissed off that she came to help him out. It was never intention by either character to work together. It just worked out that way because, again, C2 was following Marion's orders. But the point you got to ask yourself is, how does this ruin his likability? Because he lost? Because C2 had to get involved? However you look at it, this is not a valid point on any level. You're just picking something he did that you didn't like, I guess, which if you want to rewrite this article as 10 things I didn't like about Lelouch, go for it. Or 10 possible mistakes Lelouch made, again, go for it. But likability, no. Terrible choice right here. So we're already starting number 10, and we've got the story. The person who wrote this completely got the story wrong and came to the wrong conclusion. What else would you expect?
I understand. Just who do you think I am anyway?
Why did you rescue me?
I told you already. I can't have you dying.
Number 9. The way he becomes endowed with Geass isn't exactly heroic. Lelouch is trapped with the terrorists. Suzaku is told to kill him, then is shot himself when he refuses by the soldiers, by the way. On the run, under fire, C2 is shot protecting Lelouch. Despite C2's sacrifice, Lelouch is thinking of Nunnally touching in a way, but not particularly grateful. He's thinking of Nunnally touching in a way, but not grateful. I have no idea what that means. When C2 offers him the contract to use Geass, his first act is to make the Britannian Royal Guard chasing him to kill themselves. He openly accepts the idea that his life is essentially a lie.
Why you really screwed this one up.
I have to respectfully ask, what is the point being made here? Lelouch's life was threatened, and he killed the people attacking him, who actually shot C2 and basically killed and he thought had killed Suzaku at the time. I don't see why this is an unlikable moment. If anything, when Lelouch uses Geass the first time, it's one of those epic parts in the entire anime, and most people honestly love that part. So how can you say it's not a likable moment? This is so strange to me because he killed people who attacked him. What's the problem? And the whole discussing Nunnally, yeah, people think about those they care about before they die. And the fact that he was thinking about her before he left instead of his own selfish desires actually is a good thing of the character. What exactly was wrong with this scene? Are these people crazy? Did the person not get an editor to look at this? This is awful. Completely miscategorizing a great scene in the anime. I mean, this was self-defense. Did Lelouch maybe go a little overboard with the command? Maybe, but it is an anime, right? Lelouch is an anti-hero. I don't see the problem here. This is crazy. Terrible framing of the story, and like the previous point, the person either didn't watch the anime or pretend to not have, because I don't even know what point they're making here. Well, I know what the point they're making here, but I don't think it's a valid one at all.
He mustn't die!
A man who detests his own country live his life.
Are you some kind of radical?
Number 8, his treatment of Suzaku is self-serving. Lelouch won't use the Geass on Suzaku, but he doesn't seem to have a problem with letting him take the heat for killing Prince Clovis or putting his life at risk. Suzaku, for his part, looks at the exiled prince as a best friend, at least for a time, but at the same time, strongly disagrees with his relative take on morality. The end of the first season ends. The end of the first season ends. You could just say the first season ends with the two shooting at each other. But Lelouch won't hesitate to ask it for his help when it serves his purposes. Again, I'm not sure what the problem here is. Both characters have reasons for hating each other. Both characters have done awful things to each other. I don't see what the problem is. From a narrative point of view, you already got something wrong. You said Lelouch had no issue with him taking the heat, with Suzaku taking the heat for Prince Clovis's death, but that's not the case at all. See, you wrote here, but he doesn't seem to have a problem with letting him take the heat for killing Prince Clovis. No, in fact, he rescued him so he wouldn't die from execution and then took credit for it. So obviously he had a problem with it. That's so ridiculous to me. He also didn't know Suzaku was going to be the one tried, or I should say not tried, convicted as the one who killed Clovis. He didn't know that if he killed Clovis, they would blame it on Suzaku. He had no idea what was going to happen. He was surprised and looked at the TV screen. He wasn't like, haha, I'd always planned Suzaku to be the one to take the fall. He was more like, what? Suzaku's taking the fall? No, I'm the one who killed him. You know, you just watch the episode and they clearly show that to you. I mean, do they state every single thing I just did? No, but if you use some basic common sense, you would know that. I'm really confused as to how you got that wrong, unless it was purposely, which I wouldn't be surprised at this point. Putting his life at risk, I don't know what the context is there. I guess maybe in the end during the Zero Requiem. Other than that, I mean, Suzaku and Lelouch don't work together ever during the story until the end. There is a couple other examples, like when they wanted to stop Mao, but those are few and far between. And usually Suzaku is the one who volunteers. For example, when the gun turret in 16 was pointing at both of them, Lelouch was like, we'll find another way. And Suzaku was like, no, I'll go take it out. Lelouch didn't want Suzaku to actually get in there. The only time Lelouch was like okay with Suzaku dying, putting his life at risk rather for his help, was during the Zero Requiem. Other than that, if they worked together, Lelouch did not want Suzaku to die. That really bothered him a lot. I mean, by stage 17, he didn't want to use. He was still discussing using Geass on Suzaku. Until then, he never would even consider doing that. And even when he did use Geass on Suzaku, it was as a last resort. So no matter how you look at this is a terrible take on the relationship between Suzaku and Lelouch. Horrible stuff right here. And then who cares about what they disagree on? And they shoot each other. I mean, I just don't get the point here. His treatment of Suzaku is self-serving. Only towards the end, and I wouldn't even call it self-serving because Suzaku agreed to help him out at the end. Both of them were getting something out of it. Suzaku joined him because he knew that through Lelouch, they would erase the memory of Princess Massacre, and Lelouch joined Suzaku because he wanted to obviously make the world and bring it into a bright future by destroying the evil, destroy the Britannian Empire through the Zero Requiem. Like, they both were using each other on some level. I mean, what Suzaku did to Lelouch, centering him, not surrendering him, bringing him to the Emperor Charles to get the promotion as the Knight of Seven, that was self-serving too. I don't know what I don't get this one. This is such a bizarre. I'm losing my brain cells trying to understand this, so we're going to move on. But you get the point. Another miscategorization of the story, getting things wrong. What else is to be expected?
The suspect is an honorary Britannian.
What the? He's charged with high treason for murdering a prince.
No, you're mistaken, Jeremiah. He's no murderer. The man who killed Clovis was myself.
Machine gun linked to the security camera. The lag on these systems is tight, 0.05 seconds.
That means we can't access it this way. We'll have to head back up and disable the main. Wait!
Number 7. He goes the extra step to kill his half-brother Clovis. Clovis La Britannia, original viceroy of Area 11, not if he's the original one, but he was the one currently at the time, and half-brother to Lelouch, is certainly a snob and doesn't blink at ordering the deaths of hundreds in the Shinjuku ghetto if it means securing his position. I don't know what the point is then. If you're saying this guy was pretty evil, so he didn't deserve to die, is that what you're saying here? He gets swept up in Lelouch's quest for revenge against his family. He wasn't involved in Lelouch's mother's death and knows little about it. But Lelouch coldly shoots him in the head. It's an example of his cold-blooded approach to getting what he wants. No. Just no on so many levels. Number 1, so what? How does this ruin his likability? Did anyone watch the scene when he killed Clovis and said, yeah, how dare he kill him? I hate Lelouch now. Most people are like, yeah, Clovis is pretty evil. For the same reasons you just stated, because of what he did. How that ruined his likability? It doesn't. All it does is make people like him more because he protected everyone from Clovis's tyranny and stayed a lot alive, including Collins. If he hadn't done that, if he hadn't stopped Clovis, they would have been killed. Now, did he have to kill Clovis to complete that exact task? Not necessarily, but as he explained to Suzaku, killing an enemy commander makes sense. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that what Lelouch did here was entirely heroic, right? This is definitely an anti-hero moment. But the question you got to ask yourself is, so what if it is? Does that mean that he's not likable because of it? Most people didn't care about Clovis. Most people consider him a sham. Even his father hadn't a very low opinion of him. I don't understand the explanation they're giving here. Just because he was involved in Lelouch's mother's death, who cares? He was an enemy commander. He wasn't a good person, and Lelouch had to do stuff like this to get him ready to do other things later on. You got to, if you're going to commit acts of as he's told, was it Tazuki Hara, the path of blood, you got to be willing to do some things. You can't change the world for getting your hands dirty. That's one of Lelouch's greatest philosophies about life. So killing Clovis made sense because of, again, Lelouch's perspective on things. So this scene worked for me. I didn't hate Lelouch because of killing Clovis. I won't tell you it was not the most heroic thing, but again, as I said at the beginning of the article, or this video discussing the article, characters can do awful things and we can still like them because it's a fictional story. In real life, we'd obviously feel differently, but this is not real life. This is an anime, a fictional story. So, like everything else here, there's no argument to be made. They're just saying that Lelouch did some awful things. This is literally just a list of 10 things Lelouch did that were awful in the story, or at least they think were, by miscategorizing and getting the narrative wrong. Pretty bad stuff so far.
However, you can't change the world without getting your hands dirty.
If knowledge of her gets out, I'll be disinherited. Tell them back home we're carrying out a planned urban renewal here. As Clovis, third prince of the Empire, I command you, destroy Shinjuku Ghetto! Leave no one alive!
That's where Clovis was punished for ordering the slaughter of countless unarmed dilemmas. I will not repudiate battle on a fair and level field, but neither will I tolerate a one-sided massacre of the weak by the strong.
Prepared! I have been from the moment I killed Clovis!
Number 6. This one is yeesh. His treatment of Euphemia is quick, ruthless, and selfish. Lelouch was close to his half-sister Euphemia when they were both children. Even much later, she was able to convince him to cease his rebellion and recognize the administrative zone of Japan. They were also going to work together too on it, if we're going to be narratively accurate. It is true that his use of Geass on her was accidental, and purely objective view would say he was justified in quickly shooting her to avoid her going on a rampage against the Japanese. But did he actually have to capitalize on her death, making her the scapegoat for the massacre and claiming the status of a hero? I don't know what the problem is with this. Again, you got to look at the context of the scene, like everything else. Number one, what was Lelouch supposed to do? Not help out the Japanese fighting off Britannia? I mean, think about this scenario, for example, right? Or not for example, just think about this, right? Okay, if he kills Euphemia and the Japanese people are angry, and Lelouch says, we're not going to take any action, we're just going to move on and not do anything, his members are going to be very angry and probably suspect and probably a little confused why Lelouch wouldn't take action, considering Lelouch always takes advantage of situations like this. Like, think of Naruto, right? They caused that whole I guess it was a landslide, and they took advantage of it by attacking Britannia and nearly killing Cornelia. The same was with poor Yokozuka. The Black Knights always take advantage of people dying in like large massacres or an explosion or some sort. Like, this is standard Zero tactics. So if Zero was to say, yeah, we're not going to do it this time, people might get a little confused, maybe even suspicious. More importantly, he had to act like this. If he didn't do that, he would have lost respect for all the Black Knight members, because this was a major massacre. Lots of Japanese people died. Something had to give here, and Lelouch had to take action and pretend like it didn't bother him, because we know it bothered him. They're acting like Lelouch just took the glory and it didn't affect him at all. When you see him with C2 near the end of this episode, it was 23, he's like upset and she's hugging him, and he tried to talk to Nunnally. He talked to Nunnally about Euphemia, and he realized that they'll never ever get a chance to see each other again. So he was visibly upset with the situation, but he's Zero. He has to, as Colin said, he has to play his role. This was the next logical thing. And he always said before they were going to make a new nation anyways. It was always the plan. It was just that this was the best opportunity to make it happen. Was that mean to Euphemia? Debatable. He still felt bad about it. He still mourned her death, but he also had to move on. And he at least later on decided to erase the memory of Princess Massacre with the Zero Requiem. So at least on some level, he'd always bothered him, and he tried to make amends of it later on in the story. In terms of killing her, again, he had to because the Chancellor wasn't a thing at the time. If it was, then obviously that could have been used, but it wasn't. I didn't see anything wrong with this. Of all the things Lelouch did, this was actually the best strategy to make up for what happened. I mean, it was an awful situation. He made the best of it. In terms of it being ruthless and selfish, no. What he did, becoming the hero, because after the massacre, was not selfish and ruthless. It was actually very important because he decided to take on the burden on his own. That might have been selfish, but to not worry about himself and help everyone else out by, again, starring the United States of Japan and forming all the terrorist groups together. That was selfless. If it was selfish, he would have just mourned for Euphemia's death and not done anything. But he took action anyways for everyone's greater interest. So it was not selfish on his part. It was actually selfless. And the ruthless part, no, just not. A terrible take on the case. I mean, anyone on the scene, anyone who watched the show could have put this, could have figured it out. The fact that CBR went this direction with this point indicates to me that they actually either didn't watch the show or I said before, purposely chose to find the bad in this, which, okay.
I'm shocked. I didn't think you'd go this far.
It wasn't me.
What?
This time I didn't use the power. Or I should say I didn't mean to use my Geass. I knew there were risks when we made our contract. You told me how dangerous this power could be.
You've begun moving out of the stadium.
Right. In this case, our only option is to exploit Euphemia to the utmost. It's the least we can do. You all Black Knights! Euphemia has become our enemy. The specially administrated zone of Japan is a cowardly trap designed to lure us in. All armored autonomous battle knight units, advance on the ceremony grounds and wage an attack! Wipe out all Britannian forces! Save the Japanese! Hurry! I guess that's all. It was something.
We have our contract. I promise to stay with you till the very end.
Number 5 is a repeat of number 1, which is pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. They couldn't even do a new item altogether. They had to take the same one from the previous, right? When he regains memories, he once again kills everyone. This is exactly the same one as they did here. Yeah, this one here. The way he becomes endowed with Geass isn't heroic. It's the same thing. This is the scene from episode 1, and this is from episode 1 of R2. I can't believe these people are so lazy. They took the same point and repeated it twice. When Lelouch loses memories as a result of his father's Geass, he's back at Ashford Academy. He's living a relatively peaceful existence. It's when he leaves the academy to go to gambling. Actually, it was a casino, but I guess the same thing. That he runs to the Black Knights and gets cornered by the OSI agents. C2 appears just in time to restore his memories. His immediate reaction is to use the gas to kill virtually everyone present. Well, only the people that were attacking him. If there were innocent bystanders, he wouldn't have killed them. Those people were actually being burnt alive. Well, not burnt alive, but just, one person was burnt alive, but being burned to hide the evidence. Newly restore his memories. Ruthless in its ruthlessness is his first instinct. It's one of the scenes that depict his ascent from heroism to something darker. No, absolutely not. This is not one of the scenes that made him look like an anti-hero or a villain, because he was simply defending himself, and those people were scum anyhow. Just because an evil person kills other evil people doesn't make that. I wouldn't call that an evil act. When two evil people fight each other, I wouldn't. I'm not saying you're a hero for killing them, but you're not exactly a bad person either. I kind of consider almost like a neutral, like they cancel each other out. So no, it's not one example of Lelouch becoming supposedly darker. I don't, again, see what's wrong with him defending himself against people who are clearly evil and were threatening him and the people he cares about. I don't see the problem with that. How it ruins likability. Like every point here, you don't state how it ruins likability. You're just saying things. As that one line from Frasier, I forgot what the episode where the guy's like, he didn't say anything. That's every CBR article. You didn't say anything. It's just, okay. And, oh, that's right. There is no and. This is a stupid point, just like the previous one. Number 4, he thinks nothing of playing high-stakes political games. Lelouch may often be successful in his attempts to change and influence the history and development of his world. After he escapes Nunnally Japan for a Chinese Federation, he begins scheming. First, he begins reaching out to other countries with a view to creating a federation big enough to take up Britannia. Then he works to shift the power of the Japanese Federation back to the Empress. He doesn't care who or just how millions of people are swept in his large schemes. I'm not sure there's even worth anything to saying about this point. I don't understand. Like, how do you know he doesn't care about the people he sweeps up in his schemes? Does he ever say, "I don't care about the people he's acting on or acting for"? I guess. Where's the this seems like projection to me, because does Lelouch often say, "I don't care about other people" when he acts the way he does? I don't know if that's the case. He definitely has done awful things for awful reasons. But simply threatening the Empress during the wedding, yes, that wasn't the greatest strategy ever. Did he not care about everyone else in the process? Hard to say. Now, if you want to argue that he did everything for Nunnally and no one else, sure, maybe. But are you saying that because he only cared about, let's say, one individual or a few people, therefore everyone else didn't matter to him, and then his whole stakes or the whole game you claim, he didn't care about the people involved? I don't know if that's entirely true, though, because they were comrades, and yeah, the problem with this whole thing, it's just projection to me, and I never recall Lelouch actually stating outright that this is how he feels about it. The reason I don't have a whole lot to say about this is because it's almost like they're saying that because it's a part of the story that he does, therefore he didn't care everyone else. I mean, you can't care everyone. I mean, obviously. But it's like making a huge assumption about who's swept up in his games. I mean, yes, people did suffer because of his actions. Does it ruin his likability? Absolutely not. This point hurts my head because I just don't. It's not saying anything. It's like, yes, a story's about a character who commands troops into battle. Maybe doesn't care about all of them, but so what? So what? I don't see a problem here. I'm really confused. That's why I'm like, Rin's like, huh? It hurts. It hurts a lot. Oh my god.
I have a question for you, Lord Guilford. What do you do when there is an evil you cannot defeat by just means? Do you stain your hands with evil to destroy evil? Or do you remain steadfastly just and righteous, even if it means surrendering to evil? I understand. In my case, I commit evil to destroy the greater evil. Yes.
Number 3, he talks of freedom from oppression. It's just window dressing. And Emperor, by definition, doesn't care much for equality. In his favor, Emperor Lelouch does put an end to the rigged class system in Britannia and its archaic and oppressive laws. He frees the colonies and does away with the numbers concept. But as always, Lelouch never hesitates to use force to stop any resistance in its radical forms. All of the progressive acts, though, are just a front for the real plan Zero Requiem, which essentially involves him taking over the world. This is so stupid. I don't think this has to be a troll job. You know, like he was doing this, as a face, right? This wasn't actually his plan. He wasn't trying to hurt anyone. It's just that he had to act that way to become the most evil person in the world for the Zero Requiem. You realize that, right? You're saying that. Did you watch like episode 24 and then realize there were more episodes after that? This is so stupid. Yes, this is part of the plot of Zero Requiem. He had become the greater evil. So he did evil concepts or acts. And yes, it might have pissed off the fans. No, I'm sorry, not the fans. The characters. But the fans had no issue with this. Everyone loves the Zero Requiem. Well, not everyone, but most people do. So how can you say one of the aspects of Zero Requiem was, what's the word? Awful. Or ruins likability? Are you serious? I like how they go from episode 10 to 20-something. Like, there's other things happening in the story, right, besides Zero Requiem? I'm not even going to discuss this further. This is just dumb. If Lelouch was just doing this as this is with Charles, you have a good point, but this is not Charles, okay? This is Lelouch. Terrible take.
As planned, the hatred of the whole world is now focused directly upon me. And now the only thing that remains is to get rid of me and finally break the cycle of hatred. The legend of Zero isn't dead. It lives within the hearts of the Black Knights. Schneisel will serve Zero also. With this, the world will gather not for an exchange of force, but for an exchange of open dialogue around one table. Mankind will be able to move forward into the future.
that
Yes.
is the Zero Requiem.
Oh my god. Even Nunnally is swept up in his grand plan. Number 2. By the way, this is from Lelouch of the Resurrection. Why would you put Lelouch of the Resurrection in a part about the original series? I don't know. It's CBRs, they know what they're doing, obviously. Younger sister of Lelouch, Nunnally v. Britannia, arguably the kindest, nicest, and most outstanding, understanding character in all of Code Geass. What does that have to do with literally anything? That's such a stupid way to frame this. And you could argue Euphemia was just kind as a person, too. And Cecile's a nice person. Suzaku has issues, but he's not a bad human being. Lloyd's okay, too. I mean, what a weird way to put it. It's like, she's such a kind person. How could Lelouch do anything for her? I mean, or hurt her? This is the same person who fired Flayas during the final battle against Lelouch, okay? She's not exactly a kind person. She murdered, what, thousands of people? Come on now. Give me a break. She's blinded and paralyzed after witnessing her mother's murder, but bears it all with a smile. Yeah, that's true. Lelouch is concerned for her and loves her in his own way. But still he uses Geass on her, and she becomes an unwilling pawn in his grand plan to take over the world. Sure, she ends up the 100th Empress on Britannia, but it was a traumatic route for her. I'm not sure where to go with this point. I mean, where to start. But I guess we'll start. We'll go to the beginning. Number 1, Lelouch used Geass on her because she wanted to make the Democles the source of everyone's hatred. Lelouch said, oh, I feel the same way. So he used Geass on her to take the key because they had the same goal. Notice that after he uses the Geass on her, he actually talks to her and says he loves her and she grew up and he appreciates her before the Geass effect wears off. So Lelouch obviously cared about her and felt bad about using the Geass as well. So it wasn't like he just did it in a cold way. Now, granted, once the effect actually wore off, then Lelouch had to, put back the mask on and be Emperor Lelouch. But don't act like he did it in a cold fashion. He really thought about it and only did it because both characters wanted the same thing. That's the first thing to note. Number 2, once she realized what was actually going on, she was upset about the whole situation. Lelouch had to sacrifice himself for all this to occur. And that's why she was actually crying, because the whole time she realized that Lelouch was actually not a bad person, given everything that happened. The other thing I don't understand is it was a traumatic route for her. Now, look, Code Geass isn't exactly a show that shows PTSD in action, except for, Shirley. It was a good scene of that. So I don't know if she actually was traumatic for her. In Lelouch of the Resurrection and even the end of R2, she seemed fine to me from what the show was demonstrating. So again, more projection. We don't know how she was after the event. She seemed okay to me. I know people have, at night when they're sleeping, it's a different story, but the story doesn't go out of its way to show this in other scenes. So I'm going to assume it wasn't that traumatic for her. It's just a strange, and she becomes a 100th Empress. Well, at that point, it was actually the Principality of Britannia. And it wasn't really the same Britannia that we know of in the story. And who cares if she became in charge or not? I don't know what this last point has to do with anything. It's like, in the first part, we're saying she's a nice, kind person. Then we're saying Lelouch used Geass on her, even though he cared about her. And then we're saying she became in charge, but the route was awful for her. Oh, because she became in charge because of Lelouch's plans? I thought Schneider was really running everything anyway, and she was a figurehead, like the Queen of England. I mean, I guess the point I'm making is because Zero Requiem, she would become in charge. And so the way they did it was kind of awful, but I don't think so. Absolutely not. That's projection, because they're staying, Nunnally felt a certain way, and that's never staying in the story, so you can't throw your own headcanon there, which CBR does a lot. CBR does that a lot, by the way. Pretty bad stuff. I don't know what else to say about it. It's not a valid point. And there actually are things you could discuss that Lelouch brings likability in the story. This is not one of them. Even Nunnally didn't hate him after doing this. So if the person who you claim was hurt by this doesn't hate Lelouch after it, why would the fans? That's the biggest debunk I have, or the biggest kind of argument I have to this point.
The Damocles will become a symbol of their hatred. All their hatred will be focused here. That way people can move toward the future.
I see. You have the same idea, Nunnally. In that case, Lelouch v. Britannia commands you! Hand over the Damocles key to me now! Nunnally, you've grown up following your own thoughts without help from others, which means I am now free to follow the path I must take to my destiny. love you, little sister.
You mean everything you've done until now? Oh, big brother, I love you. You can't leave me! You can't! Please open your eyes, big brother! It's unfair! All I wanted and needed to be happy was to be with you! How can I ever look forward to the future without you? I tried to tell you this before, but I had assumed the worst of you, and it was wrong of me. You deserve better, and I'm sorry.
Water under the bridge.
Please, you don't have to carry it alone. I'm just as guilty as you. It's not right for you to have to bear the burden by yourself, and it never was. Let me share it with you.
Oh my god, you guys did it. You actually attacked the Zero Requiem. Number one, was this really the only way he could achieve world peace? No, of course not. There's a bunch of other ways. Guys, it's a fictional story. It's supposed to be interesting. The ending was a very first time, and even now, it was one of a great gotcha moments in anime. You know, it's an epic story. You want to have an epic conclusion. You could argue Code Geass could end in a couple episodes if Lelouch just used Geass on like everyone and climbed the ladder. But we can all agree that would not have been an exciting story. The point I'm trying to make is that, yes, there were other ways he could have achieved world peace. And, oh, that's right, you guys don't have extra points. I forgot what article I was reading. Suzaku, in the guise of Zero, interrupts the execution of the Black Knight leaders, to plunge a sword into Lelouch. It's all part of the Zero Requiem plan. It turned out Lelouch was in control of the narrative the whole time, becoming the villain in the eyes of the world in order to bring it together. He wanted Nunnally to live in a world of peace, but seriously, was really the only way that could be achieved. And what about the buys along the way? Well, let's talk about the last point they made, buys along the way. I mean, yes, people are going to die in war. It happens all the time. People don't want to act like it, but it's true. To achieve world peace or to achieve any kind of military victory, people are going to die, unfortunately. That's how it goes. Could Lelouch have used Geass? Maybe, but then again, that would have destroyed the whole point of this, which was people were going to have free will to do what they want. If Lelouch does Geass people to live in peace, it's not really peace. Then you have Light Yagami's distorted world, or is it Yagami's? Light Yagami's distorted world. That's not really world peace. Because remember, Lelouch told Schneisel he wanted people to have a future and free will to decide what they want to do. If Lelouch used, let's say, the Geass to get world peace or tried to mandate stuff, it probably wouldn't have gone as well. Could he have just became leader and not have caused the Zero Requiem? Maybe, but you still have to deal with the fact that Schneisel has the Democles and he would use them against Lelouch, and Schneisel would obviously take over the world, as he said he was going to, right? He was going to kill lots of people, billions in fact, to put the world under his submission. So the only way Lelouch could have actually achieved this was to defeat Schneisel, which unfortunately would have cost lots of lives. Did you guys not watch the last couple episodes of the story? Schneisel he wiped out Pendragon just because he realized that Lelouch being in charge, or those people would rather be dead than work under Lelouch, which is, who knows if Schneisel was even correcter. He most likely wasn't. But the point I'm trying to make is that Lelouch had to defeat Schneisel and the Democles to cause this whole plan to work, or for this plan to work. And the only way to do that would be through war, since Schneisel couldn't be reasoned with. And the whole purpose behind going to Schneisel and the Democles was to use a Geass on him, which ended the whole conflict to begin with. But to get to that point, he had to get to Schneisel, which, again, he needs a military to do so. The whole point of the Zero Requiem, well, not the whole point, but one of the main points was to free the world from the rule of the Democles, so we have a future and move on. I don't know how he could have done that in a better way, considering, again, Schneisel was pretty determined to use the Democles to subjugate the world. And, of course, they don't offer any solutions of their own. So can you really take this critique seriously? The answer is, of course, no. And like every other point on this list, they don't state how this ruins likability when everyone who's watched Code Geass, the vast majority rather, have stated this is one of the best parts of the story and redeemed Lelouch. I have some issues with the whole redeeming Lelouch part on our video, which we'll discuss in our video. But for the vast majority of people, no one had problems with this. So who are you talking about when you say likability ruined? It wasn't the characters. Everyone who liked Lelouch, or who didn't like Lelouch rather during Zero Requiem, liked him afterwards because they realized what he did. So who are we exactly referring to ruining likability in front of? The fans or the characters? Because either way you look at it, it didn't do it in either way. Okay.
As planned, the hatred of the whole world is now focused directly upon me. And now the only thing that remains is to get rid of me and finally break the cycle of hatred. The legend of Zero isn't dead. It lives within the hearts of the Black Knights. Schneisel will serve Zero also. With this, the world will gather not for an exchange of force, but for an exchange of open dialogue around one table. Mankind will be able to move forward into the future.
And that
Yes.
is the Zero Requiem.
Then you actually imagined you could maintain the world in a perpetual state of now. But life without change might be called anything except life. It's nothing more than experience. Schneisel, you truly are superior. So superior you can't even see it. Yes, Emperor Charles sought the past. You seek the present. But I seek the future.
But the future may prove to be worse than the present.
No, it will be better. Because no matter how long it takes, people will continue to seek out happiness. Human nature is why I chose Geass and to wear a mask.
Lelouch.
That was kind of jumbled, a ramble right there, rant rather, but you get the point. Now, let's talk about 10 things Lelouch actually did that might have ruined his likability from the fans and also the characters. Number 1 is Narita. Now, Narita, he killed lots of innocent people with the landslide. If he had consulted a physics teacher or Nina, as he said, he wouldn't have had to kill so many innocent people. But he did it in a joking manner, like he didn't really seem to care. And in stage 14, when he went back to Narita to find Shirley, he walks by the rubble, all the people that died, and has like no expression about it. He's just like, okay. I mean, he realized he did that, right? And he's not like Zero at this point. He could be himself, and he didn't seem to care much. That kind of pissed me off a little bit because not only did he kill innocent people, but it didn't even bother him until Shirley's dad was one of the casualties. That's something he legitimately did that no one talks about, that kind of ruined his likability. But that's just my perspective on it. Some people obviously didn't care about it. The next point I have is Port Yokosuka, where he killed General Katase. The reason why I hate this scene and why he ruins likability is because he killed Katase, which was already bad enough, who didn't actually want to die. But he used that whole suicide and he faked it to make everyone else follow him to take out Cornelia, including Colin, who legitimately believed the whole narrative that Katase did kill himself, even though Ogi and Dieter Reed obviously knew differently. And when it comes out at the end, it bit him in the butt because they realized that, yeah, Lelouch actually lied to everyone. So it ruins likability, one, because it was not a nice thing to do, period, even given the context of Lelouch's actions. But more importantly, it led to his downfall later on. That's why it's kind of on the list. The next thing I have is the way he treated Rollo. Now, Rollo, like the whole treatment he did of him it wasn't great. He manipulated him, made him feel like he was actually cared about him, which caused the whole situation of Rollo killing Shirley and nearly killing Nunnally. It was just awful. The emotional manipulation he did to Rollo during R2 was messed up. I mean, it's great at the end that Rollo, sacrificed himself for Lelouch, and Lelouch, made him feel good in his last moments. But let's not deny, for most of the series, Lelouch was evil to Rollo, and it kind of pissed me off a little bit. And at least in this, there was good karma because Shirley died because of Lelouch's stupidity, or not stupidity, but his evil actions with Rollo. Again, you may not care, but that's something I thought about when actually making a list of 10 things. The next thing I have is how he treated Guilford and Dalton. Both of them were loyal to Cornelia. Both of them, I think, were awesome people, especially Dalton, who wasn't racist and he was happy with Suzaku joining the military. He was a good guy in general. He cared about the royal family. You could see him visibly upset when Lelouch and Nunnally were being exiled to Japan. Lelouch simply used his Geass on him to make him betray Cornelia in the end of R1, and then he killed him with the Egwene. And Dalton's last moments were the fact that he betrayed Cornelia. With Guilford, he made him think he was Cornelia when he did this sign here, and Guilford ended up fighting against Britannia in a awful way. Almost went blind and crippled because of the flail warhead. I mean, Lelouch took advantage of both the character's loyalty to Cornelia again and used it against them. Some of the worst use of Geass in the entire story, and from an evil point of view, not like the practicality, but the evilness of it, which is why I mentioned it in my top 10 list. The next point I have is the Geass massacre, a very low-key scene, part of Code Geass R2, but he literally killed hundreds of innocent people, scientists who couldn't defend themselves, and children too, just because he wanted to make sure no one else gets the Geass power. It was a very gruesome event, and Lelouch had no remorse doing it either. For some reason, people don't discuss the Geass massacre, but it was pretty awful, and I'm kind of confused as to why that's the case. For me, that's probably one of Lelouch's most evil moments of the entire series. it was completely unnecessary, and he just did it because he was angry at the fact that Shirley died. It was pure rage at its highest point. And I can't believe they didn't mention this article, because it actually is something legitimate that ruined his likability for me, because it was unnecessary. There was no need to do that. The next one's more of a comedy one, but I'm still going to put it on here anyways. He kept Tamaki around the Black Knights. There was no need to do that. Tamaki is a well-hated character in the story, at least from my point of view, and he's incompetent. He constantly fails at every time during battle. Probably cost the Black Knights money, literally, with the way he spent it before Ogi was in charge of the treasury. But even just like the amount of nightmare frames he trashes, he's nothing but a suck up to Zero, or a questioner of his actions. Either way, he's just really annoying. I mean, for the team building and the whole atmosphere, environment, and toxicity, they should have got rid of him a while ago. The fact that Lelouch keeps him around, that kind of pissed me off. The next one I had was Refrain when he tried to use it. The reason why he ruins likability is because Lelouch simply gave up with the fact that Nunnally was going to open the special administrative zone of Japan, and couldn't deal with the fact that he might be worthless, or his identity wasn't necessary anymore, being Zero, because Nunnally doesn't need him anymore. So because he lost his role in life, he wanted to go back using Refrain. To me, it kind of shows weakness in the character, and the fact that Cullen had to, knock him out of it, wasn't great either. It was definitely not a strong mode for the character. Giving into drugs like that is never a good look for anyone. That's why it could have ruined his likability. And the last point I have is how he treats Shirley in the story. I've made mention of this many times now in videos and articles, but I'll summarize like this. He kept Shirley at a distance because he thought it would protect her, even using Geass on her to forget about him. Ultimately, it doesn't help because she gets her memories back, and then because he kept avoiding her, not talking to her, it made her vulnerable to other stuff, and she died anyways. To me, keeping Shirley safe and close to him, keeping Shirley close to him would have kept her safe, like how he treated Nunnally. But I guess no matter what she would have done, or what he would have done, she probably would still been in danger. I don't know. It was kind of mean that Shirley really wanted to talk about certain stuff, and Lelouch kept pushing her aside, and eventually when she died, he felt bad about it. That's kind of another thing too why I thought it was not good, because I think even he realized at the end what she meant to him, even though he kind of felt that way during the moment he erased her memories. But I guess her death was a bigger indication of it. But either way, I didn't like it. I know people are going to say like the way he treated Shirley was fine and it made sense, and there's logic behind it, but you need emotion as well when dealing with people you care about. So those were 10 things I thought, well, 10, 9 things, depending how you ordered, that he did that kind of ruins likability for me. But at least with my list, I actually thought about the narrative and not just took items in the story that maybe weren't to my liking and criticized them, which was the easy route. And CBR always takes the easy route, because why put effort into your stuff when, well, there's no need to. And that's the end of this article. Let me know your thoughts on CBR's 10 points where Lelouch, I guess, clearly ruins likability, but they didn't really show it here. What moments in the story do you think he ruins likability, if he did it all? Because again, that's a subjective opinion, since everyone, obviously doesn't think the same way, and how we interpret the story will be different. Anyways, guys, I'm going to end it here. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. Subscribe if you're new. Join the Discord server I just started a couple of weeks ago. We're trying to get more people in there to have awesome conversations about Code Geass and anything else anime related if you guys are interested. And as always, guys, the world is not a dark place, and tomorrow will be a good day. Thanks for watching.